Hello everybody, welcome to Susan's Craft Cabin. Today I'm going to show you how to make a very simple little lampshade with a crown. I've cut a pattern already and I cut my fabric pieces and I sew them all together on the sewing machine. And now the next thing we're going to do is to actually pin this to the frame. So we start by trying to align the seams with the struts and putting a pin in the bottom and the top at one side, and then going to the other side and again doing the same, aligning the struts against the seam. So continue pinning all the way around until you get a really taut piece of fabric covering the frame. If you don't get it taut, then it won't work well. You don't want ruffs and creases and pleats and things like that, because it just spoils the look. So take your time with this, and the best thing to do is to pin every sort of ½ inch all the way around until it is completely taut. I don't tend to do that these days because I've been making these lampshades for longer than I would like to remember. So that's really where we are, and if you find you've got a little tuck at the top, take the pin out and repin, and once you've done that all the way around, then we're going to sew it. I'm using a lovely cotton fabric from the Dutch Heritage collection. It's really beautiful and it's very easy to work with. But the first video I made, for which I'll put a link to, gives you all the details on everything you need to make one of these lampshades. I've sewn the outer fabric onto the frame, and now I'm just going to trim as close as I can to the stitching without cutting the stitching to neaten the edge. I want this lampshade to have a really vintage look, so I've done the top. And now again, as close to the edge as you can without catching the stitching. Quite awkward, but be very, very, very careful. Right, nice drum sound, nice and taut. So the next thing we're going to do is to cover the crown. And instead of using the Dutch Heritage fabric, I'm going to use a crushed velvet, because this is such an odd shape that it would be much nicer to be able to pull it taut without having any seams. So I've cut a piece of stretch velvet, just an approximate size, as you can see. And the way I'm going to do this is to put my crown upside down on the table, cover it with the velvet and stretch it down, pinning it all the way around the top to start with. I'm going to use a big pin in that one, and again I'm going to pull it tight to the other side. This just takes time and patience, but it's very effective when it's finished. So then I'm going to do this side. And then I'm going to go to the other side, so alternate sides to start with, just to get you started. Keep pulling it taut all the way, like that. It's quite fiddly. Pins out, then pins in again. Keep pulling it just pull it to shape and to fit, really. You have to be very patient with this because it is very fiddly. Keep going round and around, pulling and pulling until you get it exactly where you want it. And we keep going until we get it taut enough so that there are no creases or tucks. So I've pulled the velvet taut and pinned so far all the way around, and I've trimmed off all the excess fabric around the top. So that's out of the way. Got my needle and thread, and I'm going to stitch along the top, pulling all the time the velvet into position, keeping it nice and taut all the way around. As I said, it just takes a bit of patience and a bit of time. So pull it, keep pulling it over the top of the frame and stitch it into position, and carry on doing that all the way around. So I've done that, I've stitched all the way around the top, and now I'm going to stitch around the bottom through this piece of fabric here, attaching the fabric to the crown. Make sure you catch it in every stitch with the binding, because once you cut this piece out, you don't want the fabric to move. So I've stitched around the bottom now, and I've started to trim the fabric around the top all the way around. Just as, again, please try not to catch your stitches or your fabric will come away. So as close as you can to the edge without cutting in to the stitching. Right, so you pretty much got your crown shape there, but now we have to remove this middle section. So just plonk your scissors in and cut right the way to the edge, and again cut as near to the stitching edge as you can, if you can see that, just to give yourself a nice neat edge. So there we have almost finished crown. We've got to line it, but we can have a look and see what it's going to look like. Very pretty. I understand that this frame is more of the French style than the English style, but I may be wrong, but it's certainly a more unusual shape to the norm. So with this crown, I don't want it to be too firm inside. I want it to look like an old-fashioned crown like the Queen would wear. So I want it a bit ruffled on the inside. So I'm simply going to not measure anything. I'm going to take the gold crushed velvet, and I'm going to just put it on the top and plunk my finger and my hand in there like that, so I get that sort of look. That's the sort of look I want. And then I'm just going to cut it around. I know you have a bit of wastage, but it's worth it to get the look that you want. And you can always use the bits and pieces for other things at a later date. So we've done that, and now I'm just going to loosely pin it all the way around the top on alternative sides like I do normally. But as I say, I don't want it to be too formal, this one. I want it to be a little bit looser inside. And when I've done that, I'm going to stitch around, catching in the gathers, and then I'm going to stitch the bottom as well. So now I have stitched the bottom, and I've stitched around the top, and I'm just going to trim all around the edge at the top here. I've got the look that I wanted inside. It's quite heavy velvet, so it's quite hard to cut through, especially when it's layered. So there we have the crown. Bit rough and ready at the moment, but we'll soon be ready to decorate. As I've said before in my previous videos, if you wish to sew on your braid, you can, but these days you really don't need to. You've got a glue gun with strong glue, and as long as you use low wattage light bulbs, there should be absolutely no problem. So now I'm going to decorate the crown, and I'm going to finish the top edge first with this gold braid, and then I'm going to run along the bottom of that. So just a small amount of the glue, hot glue, strong glue. If you wish, you can sew this on, but these days it's not really necessary. When I first started making lampshades, I said before, there was no alternative. You had to sew everything by hand. So it took a lot longer. Make sure you get plenty of glue on, but be careful not to let it run onto the fabric that you don't want to cover. You just use braid is simply to cover the raw edges and the stitching and be decorative at the same time. Firm it down, make sure it stays in place. So we've done the top edge, and now we're going to run some more around the bottom here, like so. All the way around. So I've done the crown, which is very pretty, and now I'm going to cover the struts and the seams, my sewing seams, with the same braid. Again, just using a glue gun, or stitching it on if you wish. All the way around, like that. Each one. Again, being very careful not to let the glue drip onto the fabric, or you've ruined your shade. I'm not going to line the inside of this shade here because I want the light to really shine through. It's such a beautiful fabric. So now I've done that. So the next thing I'm going to do is to put braid all the way around the bottom edge to neaten it off. So I've put the braid on the bottom to neaten off the edge. I've put the braid on the top. Now we need to attach the crown. So I'm going to trim the braid here, close to the edge as I can. And then I'm going to glue the crown to the bottom simply by running some hot glue all the way around quickly as I can, and then positioning the crown, holding it down firmly while the glue sets. And now I'm going to use some braid all the way around to neaten it. So simply glue and then make sure that your braid covers all the raw edges and the stitching. I always like to leave a little bit of overlap with the braid. So now we're ready to decorate the bottom. So to decorate the bottom, we're just going to use gold fringe and beaded trim. And I'm going to just use the glue gun again all the way around, attaching it as I go along onto the bottom edge just with the glue. It covers up all the raw edges and is in keeping with the period feel of the lampshade. So I put a double layer of fringing on this lampshade, and now I'm going to, as a finishing touch, I'm going to use this lovely beading. And again, we just put it on in exactly the same way as we do with a bit of glue and all the way around the edge, just like that. So the lampshade is now finished. It's really quite beautiful, and what I would normally do with fabric lampshades is to treat them with a fire retardant solution. It's the sort that they use on upholstery, and what you do is you spray the shade from a distance until it's saturated, and then you leave it to dry. I usually leave it to dry overnight. I would always recommend using low wattage bulbs or LED bulbs with any fabric shades, any that you make yourself or any that you buy in the shops, and even the ones that you buy in your shops. I would use this spray on them just for added safety, and also to protect your fabric from the heat of a light bulb. You want your shade to last as long as possible. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If there are any questions, please just message me and I'll do my best to get back to you. I get quite a lot of messages, so sometimes it's quite difficult to respond quite quickly, but I will respond as soon as I can. Thank you very much again for watching, and I hope you enjoy making them. Thank you.